Every idea starts with a problem. Warby Parker's was simple. Glasses are too expensive. So they set out to change that. By designing glasses in-house and selling directly to customers, they're able to offer prescription eyewear that's expertly crafted and unexpectedly affordable. Warby Parker glasses are made from premium materials like impact-resistant polycarbonate and custom acetate. And they start at just $95, including prescription lenses. Get glasses made from the good stuff. Stop by a Warby Parker store near you.
At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You could find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting. If you go to it, just email me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Really excited about today's guest. We have Enty Lawyer returning to us. You could find him on his website, his website, Crazy Days and Nights, where he gives all this Hollywood gossip with all this great stuff, blind items. Then a couple months later, he reveals the blind items. And he also has a Patreon, at Patreon Enty Lawyer. Mr. Enty Lawyer, are you there?
I am, Ed. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, you can come back anytime. I'd love to have you back. So what is new in the world of Crazy Days and Nights?
You know, I think basically what I'm seeing is, and you and I talked about it briefly before we went on, and it's that time of the year, and the fourth quarter, and there's so many people trying to make a living on social media, on YouTube, on whatever. And what I'm finding is, like with this Sean Combs case, is there are so many people trying to get clicks, get views, and it is muddying the waters and distorting, the actual hurt of real victims.
Dude, you took the words right out of my mouth. It breaks my heart to see this garbage out there floating around. So thank God we got you here. Some sober information. So what do you make of this whole Sean Combs, P. Diddy stuff? It's been a well-known, an open secret for a long, long time with this guy, with the drug dealing and the trafficking and the parties and this kind of stuff. Way back to the walking around at the Tupac shooting on his cell phone, like walking around like he owned the place. What do you make of this guy?
Well, I mean, I think you're exactly right. Even if you go back, right, to the shooting in the nightclub, the one where Jennifer Lopez was holding the gun. Yeah. Back in, the late 90s or whatever, and then Shine taking the fall for that. And, the woman who was the victim saying, hey, it was Sean Combs who shot me. It wasn't Shine. So it's that kind of cover up. And I think that goes to things that have happened in L.A., where there's been incidents as a recording studio, and whether or not how many people like in the LAPD are on his payroll and stuff. Right. And just this intimidation that he's able to do because of the amount of money and because people want the access. So if there's some beat cop or whatever who says, hey, why don't you turn the other way? Here's some drugs and here's 3 or 4 women, or come to a party and there'll be more women than you can ever handle and stuff. Just, maybe don't take this report, or maybe say that the guy wasn't shot in the recording studio but was actually shot out on the street.
You know what? I got a couple of, maybe you can make some blind items out of this, okay? But I've been talking about P. Diddy for years. My friend was the EMT working on the ambulance at that shooting with Jennifer Lopez. And that woman who got shot in the hand was screaming at the top of her lungs, P. Diddy shot me in the hand. P. Diddy shot me in the hand. And the EMT workers were putting their fingers in. And I told this story 10 years ago. They were putting their fingers in their ears saying, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Okay? And I also have some exclusive information. A friend of mine was NYPD who worked for he got some security jobs through Keith Schiller, Trump's head of security, who later on worked at the White House. And one of those security jobs was at a P. Diddy event. So P. Diddy was hiring this Keith Schiller, who his security company hired hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cops mostly at the time for a guy for the Fisher House Foundation, who later on owned the Intrepid Museum. And Fisher had this weird fetish where he would like to hire hundreds of cops for his friends' funerals to do the bagpipes and do the traffic control. So Keith was getting all that. He controlled every cop in New York, and P. Diddy was using him.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and I think that, look, some of the things I might say today should not dissuade from the fact that I believe that Sean Combs is 100% guilty of everything and should go to jail forever.
Yeah.
I just think that I really would like to see something from the prosecution that's more than just Cassie. And I was worried. I was really, really worried that he was going to get bail, especially in this last time, because he does have that power. He does have that reach. And if he gets out of jail, if he doesn't have any restrictions over who he's calling and, just, hey, some kind of code to some third person or, a security guard is a private security guard and he could pay them a bunch of money or promise to pay them a bunch of money to go make some calls for him and stuff. There's just too many things that he can do if he was out of jail.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that other guy, the Abercrombie and Fitch guy who was appointed to his position by Les Wexner, he just got bail. Same kind of charges.
Yeah, so the Mike Jeffries thing is a little bit different. It's slightly different in the sense that, and he did have to put up $10 million, so it's not like he didn't put up anything. But what we have with Mike Jeffries is we have sex trafficking, yes. We have drugging of people, yes. We have exploiting people, yes. Transporting them internationally, yes. However, the one difference is there is no record of intimidating people or threatening them or violence or having guns found in your house that have serial numbers scraped off.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, man. And those gun charges alone, he's not going to get away with that.
No, the gun charges, there's so many possibilities. What I worry about is when you have people like Courtney Burgess, and whether or not he's telling the truth, and that he was brought before the grand jury to testify. If that's who you're bringing to testify in front of the grand jury, your case is crap. Because it would be like bringing Jaguar Wright in front of the grand jury and saying, "Oh, what do you know about Sean Combs?" "Oh, I know this, I know this, I know this." And it would just, the only person that I have, thought about that's probably been a government witness is the most recent lawsuit that was filed, the dangling over the balcony.
Yeah.
That's the only one where I feel like it's a government witness. But the government is kind of, hamstrung in this sense is that when we have all these civil lawsuits, most of them filed in California and New York because they have a look-back provision. So, there's this, it's statute of limitations is passed, but in these particular cases, we allow you to look back and you can file it regardless of statute of limitations. But that doesn't apply to criminal charges in the federal sense. So a lot of these lawsuits are coming from the 90s, early 2000s, mid-2000s, and stuff like that. So they're not applicable to any kind of criminal stuff. And I think that that's part of the problem, that there's hundreds of people that can say horrible things about Sean Combs, but a lot of them happen, prior to the criminal statute of limitations. But I will say this, and finally the mainstream media is jumping on it, but I have said this since he was arrested. Even before that, is that if he had decided just to settle with Cassie, he would not be in jail right now.
Very interesting. But now, for the audience listening that are at my age, okay, who is Courtney Burgess and who is Jaguar Wright? I never heard of these guys. And how are they involved?
Okay. So for many years, Jaguar Wright has, had a YouTube page, and this kind of goes back to what I said at the beginning. But Jaguar Wright, music industry, 40 years, session singer, stuff like that, just in the background, the periphery, and somebody who has a lot of stories. When you are, in the industry or whatever, and you're just there, you're going to accumulate a lot of stories. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with sharing these stories. And she had a lot of great stories, anecdotes, things, inside information, stuff like that didn't really break forward. But, she made a nice living. But what happens is then all of a sudden, Sean Combs, who she has talked about before, and she's talked about Jay-Z and stuff, then all of a sudden it's front page, it's YouTube, it's clicks, it can be millions of views on your YouTube, then everybody wants her on their podcast or their channel. And what happens is, how many times can you recite the same stories? So what happens is, so she keeps getting asked back, is she will embellish the story. She'll make up stuff. She'll just, add things and add things and add things because she wants to keep getting paid. And the people that are, hosting her on their podcast, whatever they paid, they want to make sure that they get their money's worth. And so she's always having to find new stories. Courtney Burgess is a person who says that they are a friend of Kim Porter's. Kim Porter, of course, is the former wife of Sean Combs. They had children together. She died of, quote-unquote, pneumonia. And he says that at some point in their relationship that he knew her, that remains to be seen, and that she gave him some thumb drives with sex tapes and things like that, and, also a copy of her book. And this is the book that went on Amazon and stuff. And the family has said, no, it's not, it wasn't written by her. It's really short. And the guy sold, not Courtney. This is kind of the problem, is that Courtney had a business partner. And the business partner took the book and posted it to Amazon and sold probably 1 million of them or 2 million at $20 each. And because there's no publisher, he, took all that money. And then finally Amazon took it down. But Courtney's like, gosh, what can I do? How can I make some money? And so he says that he has thumb drives of this sex stuff that Kim Porter gave him randomly. She never told anybody, but she gives it to him for whatever reason. And he has an attorney, Ariel Mitchell Kidd, who represents, several people in this. And even Ariel says, in very legal-esque speak, said something to the effect of, if these tapes exist, then they would probably show whatever. So obviously the attorney has not seen them. Courtney doesn't seem to have them in his possession. He hasn't said where they are. I would imagine that since he said that he testified before the grand jury that the FBI, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, somebody would want them. But nobody has them. And so then it feels like, okay, well, these things don't exist. And then, he goes on YouTube channels and stuff like that, says all this stuff, and it gets, headlines, oh my gosh, and there's people having sex, and there's celebrities, and there's underage, and, all this kind of stuff. But it never happens. Then you have, Busby out there, this attorney who's, now being sued for defamation and extortion and assault, and is a personal injury lawyer, and says, oh, we've got hundreds of people, and we're going to name names, and we're going to do this, and we have so many celebrities, and celebrities are just throwing money at us to not have their names associated with this. But he hasn't ever named any celebrities.
Yeah, but maybe because they are throwing money at him.
Okay, but look at it this way. Look at it legally. Okay, yeah. Let's say that there is a witness who says, "Oh my goodness," I'll tell you, like one of them, that he had this lawsuit. There was a lawsuit where there's a celebrity who basically had sex with this woman who did not consent, and there was another celebrity who watched. Then Sean Combs came in and also had sex with the celebrity who did not consent. I mean, not the celebrity, but the victim, yeah. And they did not consent. Okay, so let's say that this Tony Busby guy really did settle with Celebrity A, and Celebrity A says, oh, here's $1 million, okay? But we have a lawsuit that has been filed against Sean Combs alleging all of this. So after the criminal process is over and Sean Combs resumes, arguing these civil ones, who's the first person that he is going to depose? Other than the victim.
The celebrity, yeah.
Yeah. So it makes absolutely zero legal sense. This celebrity paid all this money to not have their name associated or something. However, their name is going to come out first thing when Sean Combs deposes them.
Don't you think that Combs or Puffy, let's call him Puffy, or Diddy, let's call him Diddy. Don't you think Diddy's going to be way run out of money by then?
No, he won't run out of money by then. I mean, even think about like Epstein had plenty of money for victims.
Yeah.
All those people were paid. I think that the vast majority of them were victims. I think that there's many more victims who never came forward who didn't get paid. So, yes, I mean, the government, if he's found guilty, part of the, the action would be forfeiture of all his money, which is one of the reasons given at the beginning, for him not to get bail is because he is facing civil forfeiture. However, even with civil forfeiture, the government would not just keep it for themselves. They would, if there are victims in lawsuits or whatever, the government would pay those. But I think that, so he'll fight all of those kind of things. And it's not a given that, that would be the penalty where he would have to give up all his money. He might have to give up many tens of millions of dollars or something, but it's not a foregone conclusion that he have to give it up all. So, yeah, I think a lot of these, quote unquote celebrities or whatever don't exist. There is one person, obviously, who has sued Tony Busby saying it's extortion and that they, threatened to, release his name and stuff if he didn't pay. And so now he's suing. And there was another person, obviously, who accused Tony Busby of assault. And if you read these lawsuits that are filed, you can tell, I think there's probably 30-something, you can tell which ones are real and which ones are just created because of the headlines. And ones where, like, there's this woman in the Midwest, and, I was at this party in the Midwest, like in Omaha or something, and this guy forced me to have sex, and the next thing I know, Sean Combs is there forcing me to have sex after he rubbed me down with baby oil laced with GHB. Okay, well, that's not real. Do I think that maybe she was sexually assaulted by some random guy in Omaha? Yeah. Something at a white party where somebody was groped or something by Sean Combs? Yeah, 100% believe you. Hanging off the balcony? 100% believe you. It just, after you read them, you go, this one's real, this one's not. And then you have a problem, say, like, what's her name? Adria. And she is, somebody who was represented by Ariel Mitchell Kidd for a while, but she kept going on YouTube trying to get paid and paid and paid and paid, and so Ariel Mitchell Kidd dropped her. You can also tell which lawsuits are real because of the ones that are filed by somebody other than Busby or his partners. Those, like the hanging off the balcony, all you have to do is look at the lawyer and go, okay, this one, is just 100%, it's detailed, and especially with this latest one with the hanging off the balcony, it just referenced so many things in the indictment. But what happens is somebody like this Adria person who, again, goes on YouTube and, do I believe that she was sexually assaulted and trafficked by Sean Combs or Diddy or whatever? Yeah, 100%. Do I think their boyfriend was involved, in being a victim? Yeah. But the problem is that you lose all credibility when then all of a sudden you say, oh, I was trafficked to Prince Harry.
Okay. Well, why is that? Because when I lived in Vegas, I knew a lot of women who went to Prince Harry parties, and I would say, oh, we can sell this to the tabloids, and they were terrified.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's the thing. Yeah. Let's go back to Epstein just for kicks. So let's say Virginia Roberts. Okay. I was trafficked to the Prime Minister of Israel. This is the day it happened. This is the week it happened. This is the situation how it happened. I was trafficked to Prince Andrew. This is the day it happened. This is the way it happened. This is the situation how it happened. Blah blah blah. Every single one of the Epstein victims, whether it was in New Mexico or Ohio or New York or Florida or the Virgin Islands. They all had a very realistic, very, consistent statement with every other victim, right? But, Adrian never mentioned this in her initial filing because her lawyer was like, I'm not putting that in there. I'm not losing my bar license. Do you have any proof? Because if you have some proof, then I'll do it. So if she says, okay, yeah, I was trafficked to, and she says I was trafficked to Prince Harry by Sean Combs. Okay, well, when did this happen? How did that happen? There's no details or anything. And then she gave some other people, and it's just like it stretches the realm of possibility. But the reason is because Prince Harry's good clicks, and also because Prince Harry, in kind of a side note, was mentioned in the Little Rod lawsuit. But Little Rod's lawsuit never actually said that Harry was involved in anything. But because his name is there, people just go, oh, we'll just throw that name out there.
But you must be familiar with the parties in Vegas with Harry.
Sure. Yeah, 100%. Look. Do I believe that there are videos of Harry doing drugs from Vegas? Absolutely. Do I believe there's videos of Harry having sex in Vegas? Absolutely. Yeah. There was a time back then when how was it? It was, you could tell by the way of the reporting that there was a person who had like a sex tape and a person who had a video of him doing drugs, and those just went by the wayside. Somebody wrote really, really large checks, for sure, 100%. But Harry also just likes busty blondes kind of things, and that's kind of his thing. And in Calgary and stuff and everything, we know for the most part who was at these parties just because they are the ones trying to sell stuff to tabloids. And none of these people at the party regardless of whether or not, they've signed anything related to Prince Harry, they never said that Adria was at these parties.
Let me ask you a question, because this is fascinating that you're taking so much time to read all these lawsuits. Are you posting these in some kind of a vault on crazy days and nights where people can go and access the stuff?
No, I mean, I generally will read them on Patreon if they're interesting, or if, some of them are like 8 pages, some of them are 40 pages. I find them to be, because when you read like one of these lawsuits or whatever, there's only 2 or 3 pages that really matter. And anybody, I should maybe have put them in a vault, but there was so many at once. Yeah. And I just, you just read them. And the thing is that you can just tell. And I think that I don't blame Busby for trying to get on this wagon, because there could be some money to be made. But at the same time, he is a personal injury lawyer. And personal injury lawyers go for, as they need to churn and burn, like as many clients as they can, because that's how they make money. And what this does is it puts them in front of the cameras. And then so when the people in Texas or whatever see some kind of Tony Busby thing, oh my gosh, I got injured in an accident, who should I call? Oh, I should call Tony Busby, because he's also going after Sean Combs and stuff, and he's been in my face and all of this kind of stuff and on the news and everything. So Tony must know that there's not a whole lot of money to be made here, because let's say, he can prove some of these cases. How much is a groping at a white party in the Hamptons worth?
Especially at this point when there's so many,
Exactly. So he's doing the same thing that he would do in a personal injury case. Okay, it was a fender bender, maybe I can get $20,000.
Right.
And
I'm going to be entitled to compensation.
Exactly. That's all it is. It's just how many can I get? And then don't forget, because he's licensed in Texas and not in California or New York, he has to partner with somebody who is licensed in either one of those states. And so now he's sharing his fee, which means he needs even more people.
Yeah, I had never heard of this guy before, but then I assumed he was somebody just off my radar, that he was out there doing stuff.
Yeah, he's just a personal injury lawyer in Texas.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, so everybody's out for whatever they can get. But I think even the attorneys realize, okay, how much? There's not really a ton I can get. Okay, let's set the bar with Cassie. She got $16 million. Okay? Did she deserve 16? She probably deserved more. Okay? But that's $16 million for years and years and years of abuse, years of being trafficked out, years of being hit. On video, we've watched her being hit. All of these kind of things, just year after year. Okay. So that's your baseline. So nobody's going to get more than that. There is nobody who's going to get more. So everything is going to be less. And then you're going to look at it, and a judge is going to look at that and to determine damages. And the judge is going to go, well, she got $16 million. You got groped at a white party. Here's $50,000. And then, Busby's going to take whatever. Between the two of them, they're going to take half. So this person's going to be left with whatever. And it's just how many can we pile up and pile up and pile up. So the way he's making his money is, I'm sure that what's happening is that people are coming to him and saying, I was groped by a celebrity, or I was sexually assaulted by a celebrity. Has nothing to do with Sean Combs. And then he goes to the celebrity and says, hey, you want this to become public. And that's what the celebrity's suing him, because it makes no sense that he can settle with somebody, like I said earlier, if Sean Combs is involved, right? Because he can't agree to keep that name silent. So, now he could do something of this, where it's a Sean Combs case and another celebrity, and makes the deal, and then never files a lawsuit against Sean Combs.
I hope the audience is keeping up with this, the nuances here.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, you're great. You're great. You're great, bro. Okay. But I would encourage you to put up those if you have those complaints and stuff like that, put them up in a free section on Patreon. Yeah. That's what I do, and then it attracts people to come to the site, and then they sign up later on. Let me take a little turn here. Jonathan Odie, you seem to be deep familiar with everything going on here. What do you make of that case?
The Jonathan Odie case. Tell me again what it is.
He's the guy that went to Trump's Doral golf course, shot up the joint, shot up cops, and then there's a video on YouTube of him being interviewed. This is 2019. He's being interviewed by U.S. Secret Service while he's wearing a hospital gown because he got shot himself. And he was dancing in one of those things, and he talked about being sex trafficked by Diddy. He knew all the stuff about Cassie in 2019.
I remember
His case
guy.
is still open, bro. They still haven't charged. There's no disposition to this case. He has to be a witness.
Yeah, I remember that now.
And then, if you look it up, there's like 200. He has 200 subpoenas in this case. For what? For a case? He's on video shooting at cops.
I do remember that guy now.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that in a bit, but yeah, I remember that he definitely had a history with Sean Combs in Florida and stuff. And he probably. But when did that stuff happen? Right.
Before 2019, but he starts talking all this stuff about the Illuminati. A lot of stuff he talks about in this the tape is only like, it's on my Patreon for free. A lot of stuff he talks about is like the Illuminati stuff he Googled on the internet, and that he's mixing in with all this other stuff. But he knew a lot of stuff, and then also too, he got divorced, and he said he had no assets, and then right after the divorce, suddenly he's out there. He made some kind of settlement with somebody, supposedly Diddy, right? Because he's buying all these properties right afterwards. But and no disposition after all these years. He's got to be a witness.
I mean, you would think so. Again, like it depends how early it was. That's the problem is, I'm not sure every single charge I don't do federal criminal law. So I'm not sure what the statute of limitations is on everything. So, you want to, the Cassie stuff was recent enough where, okay, we can do some kind of criminal charge. One of the things that, like I said, going back to something I said earlier about getting bail, was that when Sean Combs was first denied bail when he was arrested, we didn't know anything. Right, we just had the charges in front of us. The second time, same thing, because it's only been a couple of weeks. So now, this third time, not counting the appeal, we have 2 months of discovery, and we have basically saw this information, and then you can see where the defense arguments are going, and the defense arguments are, okay, there's no superseding indictment. It's been several months. The federal government should have already had a superseding indictment, right? They should have, in the last several months, they could have interviewed hundreds and hundreds of grand jury witnesses, but we don't have any superseding indictment. They didn't allege in any of their arguments that there was going to be any more superseding indictments. They said it publicly that they were working on it, but privately in the stuff under oath with these pleadings to the judge, they never even said that there's going to be the possibility of a superseding indictment. And if there was, you think that they would throw that in there. Yeah. Because they don't want him to have bail. So that worries me. Number two is that the defense argued, hey, we only have Cassie in here, which is why I think that this other person who's dangling from the balcony, I think her last name is Bongalon. But you have her, and then we have some stuff from the Little Rod case, and I think that the Little Rod case is probably the most important of all of them because of this. It's recent, number one. Number two, there's video. Number three, there's extensive video. Number four, and this is where it gets interesting, is that I think there's going to be other indictments, but I think you need to look to things like this. Little Rod in his lawsuit, which, by the way, has a lot of blind items in it, and they use the same descriptors that I use, so good for them. Then the other thing is that they allege that the person who was paying all of these sex workers who were being trafficked was a woman by the name of Robin Greenhill. And Robin Greenhill works for a company called TriStar Sports and Entertainment. And TriStar Sports and Entertainment are the ones who basically put Britney Spears into a conservatorship.
Right.
Lou Taylor. And when they were in the after the conservatorship ended, and let's just do this, and I can talk for days about TriStar, but after the conservatorship ended, and you have Matthew Rosengart come in, the former federal prosecutor, comes in and says, you know what? I really want to depose Lou Taylor and Robin Greenhill because I really want to know what about the money, where it went, who got it, how much, all this kind of stuff, because you're talking millions upon millions of dollars that washed through them. And so he's like, I really want to depose them. And he argues for a year in court, and he finally gets permission to depose them. He finally gets dates to depose them. But at the same time this is going on, Matthew Rosengart, who's already billed $4 million, gets hassled by everybody in the Free Britney movement about, hey, you're charging her so much money. And it was a ridiculous amount of money. I have an episode where I went over like everything that he charged, and it was just, he probably had 20 or 30 people working on it full-time, 40 hours a week to bill that kind of money, which is wrong. But the thing is he finally gets permission, and then all of a sudden, the day before the deposition of Robin Greenhill, he says, I'm not interested in taking it anymore. After fighting for a year and a half to take it, this person who has been alleged to just, washing all this money through the Britney Spears stuff, all of a sudden she's off the hook. And then what do we get? Not even a year later, we get her named in this Little Rod lawsuit as the person who's paying the sex workers for Sean Combs. Wow. Now, the agent of service of process, which is the person who is basically, given, like, if a company sued, they go to the agent of service of process. So Robin Greenhill and TriStar are the agent for service of process for everything related to the Kardashians. Every last lick of stuff of the Kardashians routes through TriStar. So I think that we are going to see, I would really like the grand jury to, I'm not hoping that they have interviewed Robin Greenhill based on this Little Rod lawsuit, just because everything is so recent. And if you are knowingly paying sex workers who who have been trafficked between states, that's a big deal. And I want to know if Matthew Rosengart was, okay, if I'm not going to get paid, I'm not going to do it. Is that the reason? Is it because he was pressured not to by somebody? Why all of a sudden, after all this time and all this effort, and you get permission to do it, do you just basically the day before say, I'm not going to do it?
Yeah, very fishy. So do you think there's too many outsiders that aren't sitting behind bars right now that are making money off all of this? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of people that should be very, very worried, because the government, I think, they're very, very good at going after stuff that's sideways, in a matter of speaking. So let's say they raid Diddy's stuff, right? They raid it all. They raid his homes. They get access to his bank accounts, all of that kind of stuff. And they turn it over. The electronics guys get the phones and the hard drives and stuff like that. And it takes them a while to go through all that stuff. And it takes the accountants at the FBI, the number one, college major in the FBI is accountant. And so those guys are going through everything, and they're looking at stuff, and they're like, where's this money coming from? Where did it go? Who's, how did, if Little Rod is to be believed, how did Robin Greenhill get this money? How was she told what to do? Who was the person who was doing it? And I've told people from day one that you need to think about this as a mafia case.
Right.
That's how you need to think about it. And Sean Combs is the head of this mafia family. And then you have captains, which are like his assistants and his, the other people that helped recruit. And if you need a list of names, all of your listeners need to do is just Google Little Rod lawsuit, and it's available everywhere. It's easy to find. And look at those names and just say, okay, these are my captains in the mafia family. These are the people who move the money. These are the people who arrange stuff. And you can just see it. It's just level after level after level. And what's going to happen, and what the government does in mafia cases, is they know they can't turn the top guy. That's not going to happen. And then the captains, probably not, but maybe. And if they start turning, then they're going to start exposing a whole bunch of other stuff. But a mafia case doesn't happen overnight. What the problem was is that they needed him in jail. They couldn't leave him out while they built, all of these levels of cases. So they throw him in jail, and then they can start working on everybody below. And the next thing you know, somebody goes, they go to the sex worker. How are you paid? Well, it's paid like via wire. Okay, well, do you know what? And then they just backtrack it and they go through. So I think there's going to be a lot of people associated with this. Everybody always asks me, what about the celebrities? What celebrities are going to be indicted and all this kind of stuff? It just depends, right? Is there a celebrity who was at the parties? Yes, there's tons who are at the parties. Were there celebrities there having sex? Yes. Can the government prove that it was non-consensual, right? So you'd have to go, let's say Cuba Gooding Jr., who was at a bunch of parties, is named in the Little Rod stuff. So they go to Cuba Gooding Jr. and they say, hey, Cuba, how many of these people did you have sex with? Well, I don't know, a couple, 3. Do you remember any names? No, I really don't. Okay? And he probably doesn't remember any names. Okay? So then you have Little Rod, he's got the videos and stuff of people, and you say, okay, did you really make payments? And so Robin Greenhill and everything, here's the payments. It's a payment to, this woman. Okay, they go to the woman. Which parties were you at? Okay, did you see Cuba Gooding Jr. there? Yes. Did you have sex with him? Yes. Was it consensual? Yes. So then they got to move on. Was it non-consensual? Yes. Okay, let's go back to Cuba. So there's just so many moving pieces and parts to this.
Yeah, but also when you're dealing with the FBI, especially in these organized crime cases, they'll go to Cuban Gooding Jr. and say, hey, Cuban, we've been investigating your sister. We've been investigating your mother. Your mother didn't pay her taxes. Your sister filled out a false mortgage application. Do you want them to get in trouble?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You are dealing with serious. Serious. Yeah. And it's a 95% conviction rate when the federal government's involved,
I know. The last time I remember the federal government losing a huge case, the guy ended up dead in a yacht 2 weeks later. And then his buddy, who was also acquitted, he got run over by a car in England the same day. That's a coincidence, isn't it?
People really need to understand this kind of stuff. This is serious business, man. And when I had a guest on yesterday, he's telling me, "Oh, I'm an FBI whistleblower." I said, "Man, why would you connect the FBI? Why would you contact the FBI? Put yourself in a bullseye." Okay. So if I'm gonna post one of these lawsuits in my Patreon next to your interview, it should be the Little Rod one, right?
100%, because that it has so many names, number one, so everybody will be happy. It's got literally dozens upon dozens of names. It identifies all these people. It talks about videos. And one of the lawsuits that was filed, this woman was having a tough time, thinking how she was going to prove her case, and her lawyer got a hold of one of the videos that Little Rod had taken, and all of a sudden she was able to file the lawsuit. So I think that'll be, a good thing. And then also don't forget that Christian Combs has been sued, and he was finally served with that lawsuit, and he could be facing a whole bunch of things himself. So does he turn on Dad or anything like that? Or maybe Sean Combs, the FBI goes after Christian Combs hard, and then Sean Combs has second thoughts and stuff. Because right now, I would have said at the beginning of this that he pleads guilty to some really lesser charge where he gets to keep his money. Maybe he goes to jail for 20 years or something like that, but he gets to keep his money. But at this point, he's probably like, I'm just going to roll the dice and just kind of go for it. And if the FBI is thinking that, then they need as many people as possible to, turn against him, talk about things, just really, really build up the evidence. But yeah, the Little Rod lawsuit is by far the best, just because it names so many names. It's so detailed. It talks about paymasters. It talks about celebrities. It talks about people getting paid. And it is just part of, when you look at the federal government's case, they use a lot of the Cassie lawsuit, and then they use parts of the Little Rod lawsuit. So you can tell that the federal government, believes in its importance.
What about that assistant? He was supposed to be a drug courier. He was arrested before P. Diddy.
Yeah, see, that was interesting to me is that, okay, so one of the things that happened when Sean Combs knew he was under investigation is his private jet flew to the Cayman Islands. And it went from L.A., I think, to Oakland and then to the Cayman Islands, and it was probably filled with money. That's my guess, or evidence, or hard drives and stuff like that. So that one made it to the Caymans. So then they try and do it again. And the second time, the FBI is ready, and what happens is the plane is stopped in Florida, and Sean Combs' assistant, a former college basketball player, is arrested. And he's arrested simply for possession of drugs. They didn't even try and say, oh, you're trying to deal or anything like that. It was very odd because they made him sound like he was procuring drugs for Sean Combs, and Little Rod says that this guy would procure drugs for Sean Combs. So he must get them in such quantities where you would think you could charge him with some kind of at least intent to deal or something like that. Yeah. But no, they end up just charging him with simple drug possession. And, okay, well, that's extremely odd. And
that sounds like he made a deal right there at the arrest.
It does. Day one, yeah. Yeah, because Sean Combs that gets indicted, right? So I feel like this guy did make some kind of deal because it made absolutely no sense that he was just charged with simple possession when it was everybody assumed that he was, procuring drugs and getting monumental amounts of drugs and that he was distributing them to everybody. So, and it was just also odd that it's just this, this 12th man college basketball player who doesn't look at all like a drug dealer. just like the most, baby-faced 21, 22-year-old. And there have been allegations that perhaps he was gambling in college sports while he was playing college basketball. So, but yeah, it's just that to me was just screamed deal. I don't know what's become of it though, because yeah, it's possession. Okay, how did you get paid? Well, I just asked somebody and they gave me money, because I doubt he was getting the money directly from Sean Combs. So then again, it's just, okay, here's the thing.
But why wouldn't Diddy have a lawyer sitting right there for the guy when he gets caught?
That's a good question too. But he didn't. And I think that Sean Combs was so freaked out. Was Sean Combs trying to flee the country? Because they were successful the first time. It was essentially an empty plane. I think just a person to go take whatever it was to wherever it was going in the Caymans. But maybe it went so well, and so he's like, I'm going to leave the country or whatever. But there's very few places that you can go on this earth where you're not going to get extradited. Does Sean Combs want to go live in Cuba? Probably not. Does he want to go live in Russia? Probably not. Does he want to go live in Iran or North Korea? No. And that's pretty much it.
What do you make of all these pictures of Trump with and Ivana Trump, the wife, hanging all over Diddy? Have you seen those pictures?
Yeah, look, there's plenty of pictures of Sean Combs with Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, and there's Sean Combs with Prince Harry and Prince William. There's Sean Combs with whatever celebrity you want him to have had to taken a picture with, he's probably taken a picture with. If you want him, if you're trying to make some kind of story about some kind of connection between Sean Combs and Magic Johnson, here you go. There's a bunch of pictures of them together looking all chummy, so Magic Johnson must have been a part of it or whatever. And, that one actually has some legs. But I'm just saying, like, there's so many pictures, right? And how many pictures do celebrities take with people? And
these are pretty intimate pictures.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of those. There's pictures of Sean Combs, with Kamala Harris. There's pictures of Sean Combs getting keys to cities. There's pictures of
I know those pictures, but she's like hanging on him. She's biting on his chain on his neck. They're pretty interesting pictures. What about now? There's a rumor that the reason Ben Affleck divorced Jennifer Lopez was over this. So he heard about some tapes or something.
Okay, this goes back to. Do I feel like Jennifer Lopez lied to the police? Yeah. Do I think that she hid the gun for Sean Combs?
With the gun, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Do I think that it has any relation to Ben Affleck divorcing her? No. Okay. Is she going to be charged with a crime? No. And the reason that I think that Ben and Jen broke up is that Ben was like, all I want to do is go make my movies, chain smoke cigarettes, and have a beer, and sit at home. That's all I want to do with my life. I go act. I just want to direct. I just want to watch movies.
Hey, you look so miserable, yeah.
Right. I don't want to go out in public. I don't want the paparazzi to follow me. I don't want to be seen everywhere. I don't want to have to smile. I don't want to have to dress up. I don't want to have to pretend that I'm having a great time being at an event that I really don't want to be at. And that's why they split.
What about Ashton Kutcher? Now, I'll give you a little background. I did the cell phone forensics with that first girl, the one with the sweater, and I recovered the caller ID picture of Ashton Kutcher's phone number in her phone. But somehow, somewhere, somebody snapped their fingers and says, no, none of this happened. And everybody says, okay. What about Ashton Kutcher and all his stuff? And Diddy, what do you make of that?
Well, Ashton Kutcher has escaped a lot of things, right? I mean, he's responsible for that girl's death. Did he kill her? No. Did he treat her like crap? Yeah. Did he just want to use her? Yeah. So he says, no, I can't make it, and then she gets killed by the guy. Yeah. So that's number one. Number two, obviously an enabler of Danny Masterson. Hey, we're going to write you a letter of support and stuff, and we believe in you. Oh, we didn't know these letters were going to be made public, or else we would have never written one. So that kind of shows you where he's at on that. Ashton Kutcher obviously was part of Thorn, which is supposedly some kind of sex trafficking organization, and he's claimed to have saved 10,000 or 20,000 people. It's some ridiculous number. And Thorn hasn't saved anybody. And
But it is some kind of facial recognition software. What the hell's he doing with that?
Right? Ashton Kutcher is always on the periphery of all these really bad things, but nothing ever seems to completely suck him in.
Oh yeah, they snapped their fingers. That story ended in a day.
Yeah.
And then when the other woman came forward and Demi Moore says, "Oh yeah, he did cheat on me," then suddenly they believe her with no evidence of it. But let me ask you this: there's a really strange story about Kutcher too, where he had that restaurant company, right?
Yeah.
And one of the partners, he was
Dolce Group? Was it Dolce?
Yes, I think it was.
Okay.
And one of the partners in that, he was on Millionaire Matchmaker. He had his own reality TV show where he was starting a casino down in the Caribbean. That guy had all kind of allegations against him and lawsuits. That's been totally scrubbed. I can't even find that guy's name anymore. Do you know that story?
I don't know the story, but I mean, Dolce, and I was a frequent attendee of many Dolce restaurants. Geisha House, probably the most. And, there's another partner that they had in that's not even that guy that you're talking about. And I don't remember exactly all the details. I can't remember if it was a guy who was maybe on Big Brother with them, or was on Big Brother or something like that, and also was really, really shady. There was so much shady money in Dolce Group. But the thing is I kind of, whenever there's a restaurant group, I just assume it to be shady.
Yeah, you're right.
And I assume it to be money laundering. There's just too many in L.A. where I go, oh, yeah. And especially when you're talking about, like, the Armenian mafia or the Turkish mafia, Persians running through money that they've, Russians or whatever. I just feel like every kind of restaurant group or even a restaurant just is, especially in L.A. where it costs so much, is just basically money laundering.
Yeah, in New York, you get the real laundering. The laundering of the tablecloths has to go through certain guys with Italian names, and you have to buy your liquor from certain people. It's a whole shenanigans operation there. Okay, we've covered a lot of reality stuff, right? What do you make of all these crazy Allie Carter, and she was in a tunnel under Diddy's house and all this? Can we debunk a lot of this insanity?
Okay. Well, okay. The Allie Carter one, I get asked about Allie a lot. Okay. And the problem is that I think that Allie is a victim, okay? But it goes to everything that I said at the beginning, whether it's Allie, whether it's Jaguar, whether it's Courtney, whether it's this woman, I think her name's Misha or something, who said that she was one of the Jane Does in the lawsuit. And the lawyer for the actual victim said, no, this is not the person. And it's just they've realized that if they go on their YouTube and instead of getting 10,000 views and they go on there, and here's the thing, you guys, most of the time, you have to be careful about what you say about people because there's a chance you're going to get sued, okay? Sean Combs is not going to sue Jaguar Wright, Allie Carter, Courtney Burgess, any of these people. So they can literally go and say anything. What I am waiting for, what I have been talking about for probably 2 months, and it hasn't happened for a while. But remember, when this first came out, it was like, oh, there's a Justin Bieber tape where he's being sexually assaulted by some guy, or Justin Bieber is being sexually assaulted by Usher, or whatever. And I was like, if I'm Justin Bieber, and let's say I haven't been sexually assaulted by Usher, or by some other random person, and somebody talks about this, I'm going to sue them. Now that hasn't happened, and I really, and for whatever reason, people stopped really going down that road, and because I feel like if he hadn't been, then he was going to sue. But you guys, people can say anything. I can go on my YouTube today and say that Sean Combs trafficked 20 people to wherever for some kind of execution. And he killed, he had arranged for them to all be killed after they were sexually assaulted. And he's never going to sue. You can literally say whatever you want. And so what happens is it muddies the water because then people go, oh, my God, Sean Combs, he trafficked these 20 women who all got executed after they had to have sex with, a dictator in Libya, and And so everybody's like, well, it muddies the water. But
dude, I can't. I get furious about that stuff, and I have to get this off my chest. Allie Carter used to say she was a victim underneath the Getty Museum with 300,000 child victims under there, and she stole that story from a guy I know who was a complete fraud, who claimed he was with the CIA and the NSA. The guy was making porn films. The guy was a gunsmith. I totally debunked that whole story. So Allie Carter, you're right. She's probably a victim of something. You're right.
Right.
But first the Getty and now Diddy. Come on, she's in every tunnel in town. What is that? She spends more time underground than above ground.
I got a question for you.
That's my son.
All right. So Will Rothschild,
yes.
died in this house fire, right?
Yeah.
But now it's coming out that he's not actually a Rothschild.
Oh, really?
That his last name is Kaufman. And then he went to a judge and said, hey, I'd like to change my name to my family name because, I'm ready to use it. And the judge goes, okay. And so he gets to change it to De Rothschild. And his brother, when interviewed, I think by the LA Times or something, says, no, he's never been a Rothschild. It's just a Kaufman. But here's the thing, is that this guy who went by Will Rothschild, he owned several houses on this street.
Lookout Mountain Road.
Right, on Lookout Mountain Road, which,
Yeah,
by the
bro.
way, as soon as you see Lookout Mountain Road, you just go, oh, my God, this is and he had cars and these really expensive cars, including one of the most expensive cars in the world down the street. Yeah, and you're like, so that's why the De Rothschild. I'm like, did he go around then saying he was a De Rothschild and maybe got loans and stuff from banks and everything based on the fact that his last name was De Rothschild? So I'm really interested now that this guy has passed. But again, it is Lookout Mountain, and I'm sure that, Ed, on your Patreon and anything, you've talked about Lookout Mountain a million times.
Yeah. Dave McGowan on here originally.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Maybe he's related to Andy Kaufman. Maybe he's Andy Kaufman.
Whoa,
he never died, and that's really Andy Kaufman. But now back to Bieber for a second, okay? God bless him, man. But Bieber's no saint himself, okay? He had little kids, teenage girls, preteen girls, hanging out in front of his mansion. Everybody's seen those videos, seen those pictures. Come on.
Yeah, I'll tell you a story.
Yeah.
So I had a friend who, they're very, very wealthy. I mean, like nuts wealthy. And one of them, her dad makes his money. He's basically an accountant to the stars, but runs a huge, but it's limited to celebrities and high net worth people. And so she had a younger sister who was probably 16 at the time. And Justin Bieber probably would have been 20, 21. And she told me the story about how her little sister and a couple of her friends went, this was in Georgia, and went to Justin Bieber's house. And her friends are also like 15, 16 years old. And they go to the house, and in front of the house, at the door or whatever, they weren't asked to sign an NDA or anything, but it wouldn't have been legal because they're all underage anyway. But they all had to like drop their phones, put their phones away and everything. And similar to what I had heard from a Travis Scott party several years later, is that they all had to change out of the clothes that they were in and wear basically like a white tank top and tiny, tiny shorts or just their panties and nothing else because they didn't want any hidden phones or anything like that. And then they were all given booze, and there's maybe 10 girls who came in this thing, and there's like 50 guys. And that it was just a horror show. And she and her friend, they got out probably after like 2 or 3 minutes ago. This is not for me. And because of who her dad was, nobody tried to do anything. Like they just said, oh, go ahead, go, leave, But I just think about if she hadn't had the dad that she had, then it would have been way, way worse.
Yeah, no angel. No angel.
No.
Yeah. I'm glad you put that out there, man, because I don't know. You hear people talking about, oh, poor Justin, and God, he probably did something happen to him when he was a kid too, but you can't keep doing it. You got to know right from wrong. Oh my goodness. So I got Daniel Hanks coming on Saturday. I'm going to interview him. What should I ask him about Prince Harry?
Who do you have coming on?
Daniel Hanks, the private investigator. He works for the tabloids and stuff like that. He worked for Prince Harry.
I think that you should ask him. What should you ask him? Oh, that's a good question. What would I like to know most about Prince Harry that he would know? I'd like to
knows
know
a lot of stuff, man.
Right? I would like to know more. Okay, I got one for you.
Daniel Hanks is the one who taped Heidi Fleiss's phone.
Yeah, I'd like to know this. I think that Harry fathered a child in his Calgary party. Ooh. And I'd really like to know about that. Because there is a woman at that party who was there and then wasn't there and then disappeared for like a year before she came back to town. And she was a waitress. And I really have always thought that he got her pregnant. That's one thing I'd really, really like to know. Is more about the Calgary party rather than the Las Vegas one. Because the Las Vegas one, I had friends who worked for the Enquirer at the time, and that's why I'm like 100% confident always saying that there's a sex tape of Harry and that there's a tape of him doing drugs 100%. But the Calgary one is a little bit more mysterious, and when I've tried to push that narrative or talk about like that, I've had that waitress like really push back hard. Not like with a lawsuit or anything, but just really, really push back hard. Like, I'm just trying to live my life. I don't want to talk about that time period kind of thing. And that's pretty rare. Like, people go, that's just a bunch of BS. I'm going to sue you. That's different than I'm just trying to live my life and I don't want to talk about that period of my life kind of thing. That's a different kind of response.
Absolutely. I hear what you're saying. So we only got about 5 minutes left. Okay, what is on Crazy Days and Nights right now that people can go there that you're most proud of? Recent stuff since last. I haven't talked to you for a year. You know,
I know.
What's on there? Man, call me up, man. Come on anytime you want. I love this stuff. What's the greatest thing on Crazy Days and Nights since the last time we talked?
The greatest thing since we talked. I don't know. I'm trying to think of what would just be. Trying to just basically stay on, Sean Combs is just so front and center. The Meghan Markle stuff is so front and center. It just kind of fills my...
I don't know anything about Meghan Markle.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff just fills my timeline and my brain, and just trying to get a sense of that. That's kind of where a lot of the focus has been. And then obviously since the whole Cassie thing with Sean Combs, and I'm trying to think if there's anything that... there was... the recent stuff is like, I'm convinced that, and I'm not paid for it, so I don't need to register as a foreign agent. I'd like to say that now. I'm convinced that there are a couple of tipsters of mine who probably are paid by Russia, and they seem to have an advanced knowledge on a lot of stuff. And they certainly have an agenda. And the thing is about a tipster is that their agenda has changed over the last couple of years to where they are. Before it was just like, I'm going to send you some blinds that you can use, and they're very generic. I'm going to send you some blinds that you can use that are very pro-right. I'm going to send you one or two that's maybe pro-left. And then over the last year or so, they have kind of subtly shifted to where it's not so much pro-left, but there's a few people on the right that they seem to have it out for, that they never did before. And one of the things that they have been beating into me over much of the last year is like RFK, and they talked about his heroin addiction long before he started talking about it and everything. And they were talking about just stuff that maybe like a week before it would break, or maybe like 10 days before it would break. And all of a sudden it's like right there for me to post. And it's been a really odd dynamic, and you'd have to actually see it play out over the course of the 2 years and seeing the tips and stuff. But like this definite going after like Alex Jones kind of thing, which they never did before. It was always a like a pro or indifferent to Alex Jones, but they seem to really be going after him hard. There's certain people that they seem to be going after hard, like maybe they're scared. I don't know, but like somebody like a Pete Hegseth or whatever, they sent all this stuff that's just now coming out about him. Not the sexual assault, because that was kind of, but at the same time they're like, oh, you need to look at his drinking and you need to do this or whatever. And then like a week later, it's like, oh, he was drinking at this and he was drinking at that or whatever.
Very interesting. There does seem to be a lot of Russian money flowing around. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Even McCorkle, the FBI agent in charge of the investigation of he was being paid by the Russians. But we're out of time. Enty Lawyer. Go find Enty Lawyer at his Patreon at Enty Lawyer, and also this incredible website called Crazy Days and Nights, where you can find all this blind items and stuff like that. Great content. Thank you so much, man.
Hey, always a pleasure, Ed. Let's not make it another year.
No way, man. I'm available. Okay? I'll message you in a week. Okay, bro?
All right, man.
Thank you, man.